to the White Rabbit Witch. Tonight's tale drifts from the edge of a silent lake. This is Haunted Toy Story 5. The cursed doll left at the fishing lake. Let the story begin. I remember that morning before the sun. The sky was a deep bruise, and the road to the lake cut through a forest that hadn't seen cars in years. I used to go fishing every weekend, just to keep myself from thinking too much. The routine, the rods, the bait, the silence, helped me forget that most of my life had become a loop between screens and sleep. That weekend, I took a turn I'd never taken before. The map on my phone called it Old Willow Lake, but there was no sign, no gate, no trace of anyone managing the place. The asphalt gave up halfway, turning into dirt, then mud, then nothing. The air smelled of iron and old fish. There was a faint hum, maybe the wind inside the reeds, or something below the surface breathing. I told myself it was just the water. I always tell myself, it's just the water. When I reached the edge, I found a dock half rotted and sinking. 3 plastic chairs sat there, all the same color, faded blue, and one was still chained to a stump as if someone had promised to come back. I parked my truck near the slope and walked down with my boots sinking into the mud. It gave off a sucking sound, like the ground was swallowing every step. That's when I saw it. A doll. It was sitting near the reeds, half buried in the wet earth. The hair, dark brown, knotted with algae, trailed into the water. The dress had once been pink, maybe. Now it was the color of dried blood and sand. I almost kicked it aside, but something about the way it faced the lake stopped me. The head was tilted slightly upward, as if listening, to the water. I looked around. No tents, no vehicles, no footprints except my own. The lake surface was smooth and black, reflecting the gray of the sky. Everything else was silent, too silent. I told myself it was ridiculous to feel watched. Still, I picked up the doll. It was heavier than it should have been. Soaked through, dripping from its plastic fingers, cold water ran down my arm, leaving a smell like old rain gutters. I threw it into the back of the truck. Somehow, that made me feel better. I set up my chair, my rod, my light. The routine again, comforting in its smallness. The click of the reel, the weight of the bait, the line stretching across the water. The sky dimmed into a deep violet. The forest behind me vanished into a single wall of black. No crickets, no birds, just the soft ripple where the line touched the lake. At 11:47 p.m., the wind shifted. It came low, crawling across the water. A faint smell of something sweet, like rot trying to be perfume, drifted up. Then I heard it. A sound too small to be wind. A whisper carried in loops. It could have been a child or a woman, or the echo of both at once. It wasn't words, it was rhythm. 2 short, 1 long, like breathing through water. I froze, holding the rod, pretending not to listen. The voice stopped. The water settled. I checked the back of the truck. The doll was lying where I'd left it, facing upward this time, eyes open. I didn't remember it being that way, its hair stuck to the metal bed like a shadow. I closed the tailgate and went back to my chair. By midnight, the fog had risen. It wasn't thick, but it was enough to blur the tree line. The dock looked like it was floating in milk. I watched the float bob once, then twice. Then something tugged. It wasn't a fish. The pull came from below, heavy, deliberate. The rod bent until it creaked. I stood, braced my boots, and pulled back. The line tightened, humming against the reel, then slackened all at once. When I reeled it in, the hook was gone. Snapped clean. The water didn't move after that. It just stayed still, too still. The reflection of my lantern sat perfectly round, unbroken by waves I should have packed up. But exhaustion makes you stupid. I told myself I'd sleep in the truck for a while. The air was colder now, sharp enough to bite. The fog kept thickening, crawling into the bed of the truck. I shut the door, pulled the blanket over me, and let the sound of the water fill my head. I don't know how long I slept. I woke once to a noise, something dragging across the mud, close to the tires. Then silence again. When I finally opened my eyes for real, the inside of the windshield was wet condensation, I thought. But the moisture wasn't fogged evenly. It streaked downward, like thin fingers had traced lines through it. I wiped them away and started the truck to warm the air. The engine coughed once, then steadied. In the rear mirror, the doll was gone. Only a wet patch remained where it had been. I stepped out with a flashlight, my boots sank. The ground had changed overnight, softer, wetter, breathing under each step. I followed the wet marks from the truck bed down the slope. The trail ended at the waterline. There, half submerged, sat the doll again. Its head bowed this time, the hair spreading out like ink. Something moved under it, a pulse, a shift of darker water. Then a faint tug at the fishing line I'd left out overnight. It was still there, the rod leaning against the chair, the line sinking straight down as if it had hooked the bottom. But when I picked it up, the pull came not from the lake's center, but from the mud beneath my feet. The ground tightened, sucking at the soles of my boots, and the line drew toward me. Taut and heavy, I cut it with my knife. The tension vanished, but the ripple stayed, circling outward from the shore like something breathing out. When I looked back at the doll, it had turned. Now it faced me. Its smile was faint, almost invisible, but I swear the corners of its mouth had shifted. The light on my lantern flickered. For a second, the reflection doubled. 2 lanterns on the surface, 2 silhouettes standing side by side. Then one blinked out. I packed everything fast after that chair's folded, lines cut. The doll I left where it was. As I climbed back up the slope, I heard the faintest splash. Small, careful, almost like footsteps through shallow water. I didn't look back. But when I reached the truck, the tailgate was open again, and the doll was inside, facing forward, hair dripping onto the mat. It was smiling in the dark. I must have fallen asleep sometime after 3. The last thing I remember was the sound of water tapping against the tires, the soft rhythm that replaces thought. When I opened my eyes, dawn hadn't come yet. The world outside the truck was the same color as the lake, gray, motionless, swollen with fog. My breath left small clouds on the window. Then I noticed something else. The floor of the tent beside the truck shimmered faintly. Wet. I stepped out barefoot, and the mud folded around my toes like a slow hand. The air smelled like rust and algae, thick enough to taste. The tent zipper hung half open. Inside, the blanket was soaked through, as if someone had carried a bucket of lake water in the night and poured it across the floor. At first, I thought it was condensation, but the pattern was wrong. Long, oval prints, small like a child's, each ending in a smear where the heel should be. They led from the flap to the center of the tent and stopped right where the doll now sat. I hadn't brought it there. I knew that. Last night it was in the back of the truck, locked behind the tailgate. Now it faced me, dripping, the head tilted to one side as if listening again. Its hair clung to its face, and the mouth seemed open wider than before. The lake's scent clung to it, brine, iron, rot, the same as the water. Outside, the fog was thinning. Through the pale air, I saw my fishing line stretch across the still surface. Tight, clean, freshly cast. I hadn't touched it. The float bobbed once, twice, the same rhythm as before. 2 short, 1 long. A new pull started, gentle at first, then stronger. The rod jerked as if someone under the water was testing me, waiting for me to hold on. I took the handle, felt the cold through my gloves. Whatever it was, it moved slow, deliberate, like it wanted me to feel every inch of the tension. It reminded me of a story, those Toy Story movies my kids used to watch, where toys came alive when no one looked. But this wasn't a story. This thing was breathing, The air carried the same smell from last night, sweet rot, wet iron. Something brushed my ankle inside the tent, but when I looked down, only water shimmered there. I reeled once, twice. The float went under. Then a snap. The sound cracked the morning apart. The line went limp, curling into the mud beside me. I stared at it, heart slow, breath even. The hook was gone again. No fish, no debris, just absence. I looked at the doll. Its glass eyes seemed wider now, reflecting the lantern I'd hung at the tent's entrance. For a moment, two lights burned in those eyes, then both dimmed together. Something behind the pupils shifted, as though a bubble of air had moved under the paint. A trickle of water crept from its mouth. It was clear at first, then darker, like diluted ink. It ran across the tent floor, joining the puddles left from before I watched the puddles link together, forming a slow, crawling shape. A path leading back toward me. The air temperature dropped. My breath came out in thick clouds now, drifting sideways. The lake had gone silent. Even the insects stopped. When silence grows that full, it presses on your eardrums like altitude. I tried to speak, just to make a sound, but my voice felt swallowed. The tent walls pulsed once, as if something large had brushed past from outside. Then came a new sound, drip, drip, drip. I looked up. The sound wasn't from the ceiling, it was from the doll. Drops slid from its chin, one after another, rhythmic, patient. Each one landed heavier than the last, hitting the waterlogged fabric with the sound of a small heartbeat. When I counted, the rhythm was the same, 2 short, 1 long. A reflection appeared in the puddle nearest me, my own face, pale, distorted. Then another face formed beside it, smaller, smoother, made of porcelain. Its mouth moved first, shaping words the air refused to carry. Then its reflection smiled. Only the reflection. I stumbled back, my boots sinking into the mud outside. The doll fell forward, face down in the water, and the drops stopped. For a moment, I thought that was it, but the ripples spreading from its body didn't fade. They widened, deepened, like breath expanding in a chest. I turned to the rod lying near the chair. The line that had gone slack was tightening again, slowly, painfully tight. I grabbed the reel. The pull came not from the lake, but from the mud beneath me. I could feel it moving through the ground, a steady drag toward the tent. I cut it with my knife. The line went slack, but the mud still pulsed. Then, the final drop fell from the doll's eye. It landed in the center of the puddle, and the whole tent floor trembled. A shiver went through the water, spreading outward in perfect circles. Each ripple carried a reflection that wasn't mine. Hands, pale and small, reaching up from the mirrored surface, fading before they broke through. When I stepped back, the doll was upright again. Its head tilted toward me, water still running from its eyes. For a second, I thought I heard the faintest sound. A child's laugh, far underwater, bubbling through mud. Then the lantern flickered, once, twice, and the sound was gone. Outside, the lake was flat again, still, but the reflection of the tent rippled, as if something large had just sunk below, and behind me, inside the half-open flap, the doll waited, dripping. The morning didn't look like morning. It was the kind of light that never quite decides to arrive. Pale, suspended, heavy with mist. I'd been awake for an hour, waiting for courage to form, listening to the soft creak of the tent canvas as it dried in the wind. The doll was still inside. I hadn't touched it. It sat where I left it, a dark, wet patch spreading beneath like a slow stain. I told myself I'd pack everything, start the truck, and leave. I said it aloud just to hear something human. The truck was 50 feet away. Each step toward it felt like waiting. The ground gave under my boots with a slick, sucking sound, as if the earth was breathing me in. When I reached the driver's side, I saw the tires half buried in mud. Overnight, the soft ground had swallowed them past the rims. I tried reversing, accelerating, rocking the wheel. The engine roared, but the truck didn't move. It only sank deeper. The air shimmered with heatless light. Birds should have been calling by now, but the only sound was the quiet ripple of the fishing lake behind me, and something else. A faint hum, low and steady, like an electric current under the soil. I stepped out again, looked down the slope. The tent was just a pale blur against the reeds, but the doll wasn't there. For a second I thought maybe it had floated away. Then I saw it, closer. Halfway up the hill, facing the truck. Its head tilted forward, water still dripping from its chin. The drops left a dotted path through the mud, and where they landed, tiny bubbles rose, as if the ground exhaled. I was too tired to panic. I walked to the back, opened the tailgate to check the tow strap. That's when I heard a voice. "Don't pull!" I turned. An old man stood near the reeds, a rod over one shoulder, his face lined like cracked clay. He wore a faded vest with patches of dried algae, and his boots were darker than the mud. He pointed toward the lake. "Not here," he said. "You don't drag things up from here." I tried to answer, something like, "I'm just stuck." But he kept talking, each word slower than the last. "I've seen people fish here. They never stop after the first bite. They think it's luck, but nothing in this lake bites twice unless it wants to be found." He looked at the truck tires, then at me, then at the doll still sitting between us. His expression didn't change. "Don't touch that." I glanced at the doll. Its glass eyes were clearer now, almost clean, as though the night had rinsed them. It looked new. Not a lost toy. Something that had been waiting to be found. The old man's voice dropped to a whisper. "That didn't float here, that walked here." Wind stirred the reeds. The sound was faint but constant. A hissing like air escaping from underwater lungs. The old man backed away, his boots leaving no impression in the mud. He said one last thing before the fog swallowed him. "Next time it smiles, don't look back." I stood there until I couldn't see him anymore. The silence afterward felt wrong, like a movie where the soundtrack cuts out, but the reel keeps running. When I turned back to the truck, the doll was gone again. Only wet footprints led from the tailgate to the driver's door. Each print was smaller than my hand. They stopped at the step rail, then vanished. I got inside, heart slow but steady. The key trembled in the ignition. The engine coughed twice, then started with a low, dragging whine. The tires fought the mud, lifting, then sinking again, until the whole truck lurched free with a sound like tearing fabric. I didn't look at the lake. Not once. I just watched the dirt road ahead, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles blurred white. The radio turned on by itself. Just static at first, a wide gray noise filling the cab. I reached for the dial, but the static shifted. Behind it, something high and broken, like a child's giggle recorded on a worn cassette. It played once, then again, then backwards. The laughter looped with the rhythm I already knew. 2 short, 1 long, breathing through water. I shut off the radio. The sound didn't stop. It came from the truck bed. A soft, irregular tapping, like wet fingers drumming against metal. I drove faster. The forest thickened. The air turned darker even though it was noon. At the curve before the main road, I looked in the rear mirror. The doll was there again, sitting upright against the back window, its hair plastered flat, its mouth open wider than before. For the briefest moment, the glass between us fogged from the inside. A tiny handprint bloomed there. Then it faded, and only the smear remained. I kept driving. The radio stayed silent, but every mile or so I thought I heard water dripping from somewhere it shouldn't exist. The drive home should have been quiet. No rain, no traffic, only the hum of tired wheels. But it wasn't quiet. There was a faint rhythm beneath the engine, 2 short, 1 long, as if the fishing line I'd cut was still attached somewhere, dragging along the road behind me. I told myself it was nothing, just the sound of a loose panel or the tarp in the trunk. but every mile the sound kept pace with my heartbeat. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked empty, like it had been waiting too long for someone to return. The porch light flickered once when I killed the engine. In the mirror, the tarp in the trunk rose and fell, breathing. I got out. The night air smelled of damp metal. I opened the trunk, looked at the lump beneath the tarp. The fabric was wet again, dripping onto the concrete. One corner shifted slightly, as if something inside was still settling. I threw the tarp over it and slammed the trunk shut. The echo rolled down the street and didn't stop. Inside, everything felt dry and normal. The kind of normal that feels staged. Coffee grounds in the sink, the half-finished laundry smell still hanging in the hallway. It should have been comforting, but I kept hearing the soft hiss of water somewhere in the walls. I left my boots by the door, showered, and went to bed. For the first time in days, I slept. When I woke, the light through the curtains was pale, almost blue, and the air smelled like the lake again, mud, algae, iron. I went downstairs. Something cold brushed my ankle near the front door. The doll was sitting on the mat. Same dress, same wet hair. Water pooled around it, spreading outward in perfect circles. Its head was tilted, eyes half open, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. I stared for too long. The tile beneath it darkened slowly, and that rhythmic sound began again. Two short, one long. I picked it up with a towel. The fabric instantly soaked through, water seeping between my fingers, but the doll itself felt heavier than before, as if it had been filled with something thicker than water. I carried it to the bathroom sink and set it down. The drain began to gurgle, like something inside was trying to breathe through it. I turned off the light and stepped back. The sound didn't stop. It moved through the pipes, sliding under the floorboards, through the walls, and into the ceiling where the air vents sighed. Then, a sound from the front door. Dripping, slow, deliberate. When I turned, there was a trail of wet prints again. Half-moon shapes, leading down the hall toward the living room. The TV flickered on. Static. No input, no channel, just that gray snow filling the screen. In the reflection, for a second, I thought I saw the doll's silhouette behind me, but when I turned, there was only the towel, still wet, folded neatly on the armrest of the couch. I looked back at the TV. The static was gone. In its place, a frozen frame of the lake. My lake. Same angle, same dock, as if someone had filmed from the spot where I had stood. Then my phone buzzed. A single notification. New folder created. Memories. I hadn't touched the camera. I hadn't even unlocked the phone. But the folder opened on its own dozens of photos, all time-stamped within the last 5 minutes, each one closer to my house. First the road sign, then my mailbox, then the front door, taken from outside in the rain that never fell. The last photo was darker, the frame filled with water. At first I thought it was just a reflection. Then I saw it. The faint outline of a face beneath the ripples, eyes open, hair floating upward, the same tangled hair as the cursed doll. My thumb hovered over the screen, but before I could move, the photo flickered, and another image replaced it. My bathroom mirror, my own reflection, but something else beside it. A smaller face, pressed against the glass, its mouth moving as if whispering underwater. I dropped the phone. The sound echoed once, then the dripping from the sink stopped. Silence, but not the kind that's empty, the kind that listens back. I picked up the phone again. The screen was black, but a faint vibration pulsed through it. Two short, one long somewhere in the house. A faucet turned on by itself. A line of water crept across the tiles, curling toward the door, then away, as if remembering the path it had taken before I walked to the window. The driveway was dry. The trunk was closed, but the reflection in the glass showed it wide open, and inside, the doll sat upright facing the house. When the light flickered, the reflection blinked too. Once. Slow. The house was breathing again, and the lake was calling it back. The road back to the lake looked different. Wider, flatter, emptier, like it had been cleared for me. The air grew heavy long before the water appeared. Even with the windows closed, I could smell it. Wet wood, rust, decay. The same breath that had followed me home. The doll sat on the passenger seat, wrapped in the same tarp. I didn't remember picking it up. It had been on the porch when I left, waiting, and somehow it was already inside when I turned the ignition. The drive was silent, except for the ticking of the turn signal that wouldn't turn off. Each click was perfectly timed, like the rhythm that had never stopped. 2 short, 1 long. When I reached the edge of the lake, the water was lower than before. The dock lay half submerged, its boards slick with algae that caught the morning light in dull green streaks. No wind, no insects, only stillness, as if the entire place was holding its breath. I left the engine running. Carrying the tarp to the shoreline felt heavier than it should. Each step sank deeper, the mud gripping my boots like hands that didn't want to let go. At the water's edge, I pulled the tarp open. The doll stared back, clean, dry, almost new. Its eyes were clear glass again, reflecting a sky that didn't move. "I'm done," I said aloud. The voice didn't sound like mine. I drew my arm back and threw it. The moment it left my hand, the lake responded, not with a splash, but a pulse. Water erupted upward, a hollow column that struck the air without breaking. It felt like something beneath the surface had pushed, not caught. The wave hit the truck first. The door slammed shut on its own, the sound echoing through the trees like a gunshot. I stumbled back, the mud pulling me down to my knees. The water was still moving, not outward, but inward, folding into itself. The surface rippled in perfect circles, each one smaller than the last, as though the lake was inhaling. Then came the sound. A metallic hum, low and drawn out, like 1,000 fishing lines tightening at once beneath the dock. I looked down. The water was no longer clear. Something pale shifted below, and for an instant I thought it was a reflection. But reflections don't rise. Dozens of shapes broke the surface. Small, round faces bobbing in unison, their hair drifting just beneath the ripples. Some still wore scraps of fabric, some nothing at all, but all of them were the same. The same glass eyes, the same open mouths, the same as the doll. They moved together, slow, as if tethered to a single breath. Every few seconds one would sink, and another would rise to take its place. The motion was endless, a carousel of drowned memory turning under gray light. The water reached the edge of my boots. I stepped back, but the ground pulsed beneath me, soft, alive, remembering. The lake wasn't flooding. It was calling something home. Behind me, the truck engine sputtered. Then the headlights flickered once, throwing long reflections across the water. Each reflection shimmered not on the surface, but below it. Light bending around shapes that didn't belong there. The dock groaned. Its boards flexed, and the sound carried through the fog like a heartbeat. Something brushed my ankle again. Cold, thin, deliberate. When I looked down, there was no hand, no body. Only the water shifting toward me, rippling with that same rhythm. 2 short, 1 long. I took a step back. The headlights dimmed. For a moment I thought the engine had died. Then I realized it wasn't the light fading. It was the lake swallowing it. The reflection of the truck stretched downward, drawn into the black. The door creaked open on its own. Water climbed the tires, the hood, the windshield. Then it was gone. No sound, no splash. Just the lake, flat again, unbroken, pretending to rest. I stood there until the fog covered everything. My boots sank deeper. The air was colder now, but the sound of breathing never stopped. Somewhere beneath, the line still hummed, and the water whispered its pattern, a rhythm older than speech, older than memory. It wasn't angry. It was remembering, and it never forgets what it's caught. Did you enjoy tonight's story? The White Rabbit Witch brings you tales of fear and silence. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.